version of whatever was hot at the time. Yeah, like early like hip hop, West Coast hip hop, 12 inches, things like that. Yeah, from there it got into the funk and the rock and everything else.
I was there with my brother the other day, and he pulls the record, and he's grabbing it like this, and it felt loose to him. I'm digging through the 45s, and then I hear my brother go, oh, shit. I guess he had peeled the cover, and it was just pasted on, and it was a beginning of End. You know, the one with the girl in the space. He found that right there, ousted, you know what I'm saying? Come on, guys. That's how they do it.
The Songstress album, that album, like even just like all Anita Baker, like reminds me of like my mom and growing up, and my mom like being in love, and just beautiful music, and like being a little girl when you're too young to understand like why does mom keep playing that record, or why, you know. And then, you know, when you get older and you learn about love and you see love and you play it, and then when you're at your peak, once you can reach, you know, that age and that stage, then you understand why she's singing the way she sings.
It's not about the money for me anymore. I mean, yes, I gotta pay the bills and stuff like that. That's not why I do this. I do it for the love of the music and stuff like that. You know, I get really happy when I know I'm gonna make somebody else happy by playing that special record that I know they're gonna want.
The sound quality really excited me. I got really into speakers and trying to hook up as many speakers as possible to my little preamp. That way I could hear as much music as possible, and I just started getting really into sound because of my collecting. There was a time when I shopped mostly at thrift stores because there weren't a lot of record stores anyways at the time that I was collecting, because I started, let's see, it's probably 2004, I was 14. Revolver wasn't open, which is a local store here. I think that I used to shop at like maybe two shops at the time. I would go to Tracks and Wax or East Side, and then I started going to a lot more thrift stores and doing it that way. And through going to thrift stores and kind of like taking your pick of, you know, not a great selection, I became very picky and started like remembering which labels were the labels that I liked before that I would find at the record store. I could go to a thrift store and find that same label.
So there's J-Rock, there's this other guy, not a lot of people know about him. He's based out of San Diego. His name is El Dula. He's made a couple of mixtapes that have become some of my favorites, and he's not necessarily like the craziest technical DJ per se, but his selection in his mixtapes, it kind of taught me how to look for the subtleties in songs, you know? Like there may be a song that, you know, first time you heard it, it could sound really bland, or, you know, it just wouldn't really stand out, but just the way that he would play it, or maybe the way he would pair it or sandwich it between two other songs, you just would definitely, you know, notice the subtleties and what makes that song so unique and so dope. And El Dula.
So there was this man named PJ Lewis who had a store in Glendale, had a lot of really good records. He would always come up, and I started being one of those buyers that would show up like 4 times a week, and every time just drop, 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 pick up, pick up, pick up. So then he's like, you know what? I just went to this place. It looks like it's your style. You might want to go check them out. So he gave me the number. And you know, I called the guy. The guy was like, yeah, come through. So it was on Pico. And when I got to the place, it was just these huge black, just like, you know, security gates everywhere. You couldn't even look inside, really. So this Jewish man opens the door and he invites me in. And then I go in. And it's like record heaven. It used to be a distributor. And I'm pulling like Meters LPs, Maceo and the Kingsmen, and I'm going crazy. And I think I bought about 3 boxes. And then when I pull up to him, he's like, yeah, $3 a piece. I was like, cool. Came up like crazy. And he had an upstairs part that was all 45s. So I get home and I make some calls, I make some money. And then I call him. He's like, come next week. So I go next week. And sure enough, man, it was just, he set up a computer upstairs by the 45s. And it was just every record I pulled was looking it up, man. Looking it up. I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ. Couldn't buy anything at that point.
I think every DJ gets their stuff stolen at one time. And they broke into my trunk and took all my records back in like 91, so I wanted to replace them. So I was going around to the record stores here trying to look for stuff, and that's when I noticed people were asking all those crazy prices for some of these records. And I was like, how much is that record worth? Like, wait, you had $300 for this record? Like, I paid like $2 for that record back in the 80s or whatever. So I'm thinking, man, I got like 2 of those at my house. Is it really worth like $300? So, that's what made me start to go out and look for the stuff, start digging for records. At first, it was about the sales, and so, I started putting stuff on eBay or whatever, and the first record I sold went for like $300, so I almost had a heart attack. So I started selling out of my house. Like, I would go buy all these collections and stuff I didn't know what was what back then. And the thing that kills me now, I used to only go look for house music. I kick myself now. All the killer soul funk records and Blue Note jazz records I passed on for like 50, that I could have got for pennies that were worth tons of money, but I didn't know anything about that stuff. I didn't know the value. So I accumulated enough stuff finally, to make a long story short, and I went to one of my friends' storage lockers. He had a bunch of records, and I saw he had like millions of records. I mean, he had been doing storage lockers for 20-something years. And when I saw how much records he had, I was like, oh my God, I want to get a record store going. Which I knew nothing about how to run a record store. I never worked in one, nothing. But I just said, I'm going to try to do this. I just saved up about a bunch of my money with make about $7,000, and I came here and got a couple of my friends help me build these racks and put all this stuff in here. And I opened up with only my small collection of stuff I had and gave up half my own personal collection to the store. I figured, it hurt to give up a lot of my personal records, but you got to start somewhere. And I said, well, I'll find them again eventually, or I'll try anyways. And to make a long story short, 5 years later, I'm still here.
My first Reggae 45. See, at the time when I was about 10, around 1970, the Trojan label come out in the UK, licensing a lot of the current Jamaican music at the time and reissuing it in the UK. Anyway, it became a big thing there. And you see, even on the radio, you might have 3, 4 reggae songs in the top 10 or top 20. So, for example, you might have Bob and Marcia, Young, Gifted and Black, Pioneers, Long Shot, Kick the Bucket, Double Barrel, Dave and Ansel Collins. All this stuff was, you turn your radio, there it is, you're listening to it. It's a 1970. Turn on Top of the Pops, there it is, Desmond Decker, Ken Booth, Dave and Ansel Collins on Top of the Pops. My favourite was Double Barrel, Dave Barker and Ansel Collins. It come out, Winston Riley produced it in Jamaica on a Techniques label. In the UK, it come out on the Wind label from 1970, blank label right there. This is sort of an instrumental with some toasting over the top, and the man Dave Barker started out the song. This has been a sample by all kind of Biz Markie, all the hip-hop artists, big sampler. I'll tell you that you'll recognize it from this. I am the magnificent. I'm back with the shock of a soul boss, the most thundering, storming sounds of soul. I am double O. Over and out.
most of the stuff that I found that I consider a great find is stuff that I wasn't looking for. There'll be stuff that was just in the back of a bin and I have no idea what it is, and I take it home, and it's amazing. I've had a couple of those like here at Scott's store. It could be anywhere. I'm not the kind of guy that goes out looking for like some $300 record and I have to find it. Usually, I'm looking to find stuff I didn't know I wanted to find.
Like we were in Japan, and Brown and I, like Brown's a heavy vinyl buyer, so when every stop we would get, we would buy records. Brown and I were digging. We had a crew called the Pitch Hitters, which was a production crew, and we ended up accumulating, I don't know, 3 or 4 boxes. But we weren't ready for the custom charges, so we get to the airport, we got all this heat, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you guys are over the weight limit. We're like, what? It's like, yeah, I think they were trying to charge us like $2,800, man, to bring these records back. And we ended up leaving a bunch of our promo items so we could get the records home, because we needed them for the beat making,
Was maybe the second to last trip when I did go to New York. I was gonna leave on Monday, and my friend that lived in Brooklyn, it was like our very last stop to walk around Brooklyn and Williamsburg, I think it is, whatever. John Oliver, he does the main ingredient out there on East Village Radio in New York. He called me about this spot called The Thing. It was pretty much just your average thrift store, but it had a huge dungeon in the back. So I went there probably about an hour before my flight, or before I was supposed to be at JFK, and we were rushing. I could have taken a cab, but obviously who wants to take a cab when you can take the subways, and you don't really go to New York that often. And when you get there, it's like time pretty much just stops. You keep track of all time, regardless of the time pressure that you're on, whatever the situation is. Probably spent like maybe 30 minutes there. It felt like eternity. I came out with 2 records out of panic because I didn't know what I was looking for. It was just so overwhelming. And I ended up missing my flight by 2 minutes because of that.
So I was going through all of these records and I found an original Twinite Seal Johnson 45, which I thought was crazy. So I was like, and it was the only one in that whole stack. Of this whole stack of just like complete crap, there's one 45 that was really, not only was it really, really good, but how did that 45 get to Hawaii?
I'm always personally trying to get the 45, so when we get the 45, that's a good day for me. Just today we got some 45s in. Pretty good stuff, kind of typical day down here on West Adams. Got the picture sleeves. Got some Killer Sweet Soul going. East Coast. Got the Northern Sounds. Oddball African Mode Records. Back to the Midwest where I'm from. Ohio. This is like a favorite record of mine. There's a lot of stuff from Ohio that'll really do the trick. Ohio, Illinois, Michigan. Especially Chicago in particular. When it comes to the soul records out of Chicago, nothing can beat that.
I think I have almost every Ohio Players record. But I love the covers. I love Honey, how they've got the girl and she's just like, got the honey dripping on her, and that's so bad. I love that record. And then you got Fire, and you got this lady with a shaved head, and she's like got a fire hat on, and she's got the hose around her, and it's really sexual. I love the Ohio Players, and I know I get back to my dad, but he plays a significant role as far as music. But there's a song by the Ohio Players called I Want to Be Free, And there's this part in the song when it's like, dun, and it's like the drums. And I just remember back in the day, my dad, like, we were on our way to Home Depot, and we're sitting in the car, and my dad's like, don't get out the car. And the part comes up where it's like the drum solo for like a good, I think it's a good minute or two. And my dad is just like air drumming, just like, and my dad is really just like this, you know, he's very composed, and just see him just wilding out, pretending that he's playing the drums, and then he just comes back and is like, let's go to Home Depot. I thought that was so cool, you know. So I have the not the OGs, the Ohio Players records. So those records are very dear to me.
So I was downtown Kingston and met a little youth, Dreadlocks youth there. We was talking music, reggae music, and he mentioned Ken Booth. And I said, yeah, I love Ken Booth. And he said, this is a ghetto youth, you know, a poor ghetto youth. They tell me, yeah, I know Mr. Booth, and I can carry you to his house. And I was like, man, you can't carry me to Ken Booth's house. So he gets his little cell phone out, and next thing he'll show me, see a Ken Booth's name on there. And he'll call Ken Booth on his little cell phone and say, oh, Mr. Booth, a chat there, and hand the phone over to me. And I'm like, this can't be Ken Booth. And he's like, all that. And I'm like, sir, Mr. Booth, this is a grant. I come from a foreign, ever check this up. And he's like, I'm driving right now. Check me again in an hour and I'll be home. So anyway, this young Dreadlocks ghetto youth carries me up to Ken Booth's house, uptown, a big white house, and we show up at the gate. Come through the gate, and there's Ken Booth in the courtyard with three Rasta brethren playing domino and his wife. And as I walk through the gate, I just see the three Dreadlocks brethren there playing their dominoes. A big cloud of smoke right in the middle of the courtyard. I see as the smoke clear, I see the man Mr. Booth standing there, holding a chalice in his hand, appearing in the smoke with his knit vest on there. And he'll bring me in, take me into his house, show memorabilia, whole house like a Ken Booth museum. Take me through the house. I must have spent 4 hours there. Sharing stories with me about his recording history. So you just can't do these things in the US. You can't just show up Marvin Gaye's, well, Marvin's passed, but Smokey Robinson, some big famous artists there, show up at their house, at their gate, and they're going to invite you in and treat you like family and brethren. And a man even shared a chalice with me. Boy, big up Jamaica there, because you can run around there in Kingston and see all kind of old artists, because they're just walking around and they're not like in the US, a celebrity looked up to there. They're just a man on the street there, and you see all kind of artists walking around, big youth walking down Orange Street, no one paying no attention, because they see them everywhere, you know, walking around all over the place. So that's my little story about Ken Booth. A respect to the Max there, and a respect to all Jamaican artists there for accepting and welcoming men from a foreign, because when these artists hear that you're interested in their music, like when I go to Techniques Records on Orange Street, and there's Winston Riley from the Techniques, one of the biggest old school Jamaican artists right there running his little shop. And a man welcome you into the shop, treat you like brethren. Derek Harriot's shop up on Constant Springs Road. The man's 70-something years old, famous artist, still running the counter at his little record shop. You know? Where are you going to see that kind of thing? Big up Jamaica, jam rock.
As far as jazz, I would probably have to say Grover Washington Jr. Mainly because I grew up listening to Grover Washington Jr. at my grandmother's nearby bar. Well, I used to march in this drill team, American Legion Post 30, and like every year they would have a fashion show. So they would pick songs, and they would pick songs for the fashion shows. And I used to model these like songs. Like when I was a kid, I was like 5 years old, like stealing the show, like just prancing around and posing. And for some reason, like the older people, the veterans, I guess they love Grover Washington Jr. So as a kid, I had to model to this. And I would like to say, I know that the song is called Wine Light. I'm like a self-taught DJ. When I first started DJing, a DJ once told me, Gizmo, if you want to start DJing, you need to pick up every record, buy every record with a black face on it that you see. So I just took his advice, and I didn't know who Grover Washington was. I'm self-taught, so I usually carry a record player with me. I'll never forget, after I modeled to Grover Washington Jr., I went home and cut my bangs off. I guess I wanted to be grown like these ladies, and I wanted to have some cut my bangs off.
I went to Fat Beats in New York, and it was the last time I went before Fat Beats closed. You know, going into Fat Beats, I pretty much expect to find new and old hip hop, you know, obviously in that genre. And there was this 145 that stood out. It had like a conga on the cover of it, and it was this band called 70. And the name of the song was Apariencias. And that was probably the most oddball record I could have found. At that time, I was really getting into like Latin funk. And I asked the cash register guy working there if he could, if I could play it or if he could put it on for me. And that song alone was probably like the epitome of what I was searching for within that genre. And it was so odd that I found it at Fat Beats of all places. And I found out that Setenta isn't even an old band per se. They have a very old original organic sound, but they're very new. They're actually a Latin funk band from Paris. And they sing in Spanish and in French, which is really cool. And I think just all of those factors going into just, you know, their whole concept is what makes them so amazing. And almost every song on the LP is really dope.
Just keep up the support on the buying vinyl, selling vinyl, mixing records, playing records, whatever you do, whatever you love is, you know, just keep the vinyl because that's what the true heart is, man.
Go!
Levy asked me to come down to the old Nita's Hideaway and spin my 10 favorite records of all time. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting concept. And he goes, can you do it Thursday? And I go, no, I can't do it Thursday. I'm sure I got 30 years of my life packed into listening to records. I can't imagine picking out 10 in just a few days. So I started with this list that ended up being pages long, where I was trying to think about what my favorite records would be. And so what I ended up doing was picking 10 records that I could clearly identify were pivotal points, turning points in my life. Like, I distinctly remember something about that record that set me on a whole new path. Even that was difficult, but so I started with Simon and Garfunkel, The Boxer. 6 years old, like listening for it on Cool FM, you know. I can remember this so well. And when that song, even that song today, still really moves me. I like the big, huge drum sounds in it. It's a really powerful song. And then I picked Patti Smith, Because the Night, and I thought, you know, that was the first woman I saw on the album cover with hair under her arms, and I was like, oh man, that's bad. I picked Prince, I Want to Be Your Lover, because I can remember roller skating in my parents' driveway with my blue suede roller skates to that song. It was the first song I ever actually called the radio station to request, and I was probably 10 or 11 when that song came out. And I picked the Spinners. I played all this stuff, and everybody was just looking at me because they think of me as the owner of Stinkweeds, and they did not expect me to play all these songs. But then you can see the phases of my life. I picked something off of Jesus and Mary Chain's Psycho Candy, because I can remember putting that display up in the window at Zia Records, which is where I got my first job. I was 15 when I started working at Zia. You didn't know I was 15, Brad. And little pause here. This is the present that Mr. Brad Singer, the original owner of Zia Records, gave me for my 21st birthday. After I played the Jesus and Mary Chain song, I went on to play, I wanted to pick something from the 4AD label, because that label really changed my life, and I used to collect all the stuff on 4AD. So I picked something off of Wolfgang Press's Standing Up Straight. And I played Tom Waits, something off of Rain Dogs, and then I came out of all of that, and I played something from an Australian band that I still love called Not Drowning Waving. And then I capped it with a song by Ida, which is what I'm mostly listening to today, which is more singer-songwriter stuff. It's a Brooklyn band with amazing harmonies. So that kind of gives you this spectrum of all the different things that I've done, and that's kind of where I am today still, is mostly listening to singer-songwriter stuff. I think if somebody can walk on a stage with just a guitar and blow you away, that's some serious talent, and that's kind of where my head's at.
Me and my brother, we used to have like battles, because my brother, he just loved West Coast music and I loved East Coast music, and our rooms were right across from one another. We would battle each other, and I would make fun of the West Coast, and I would put on like a flannel and like some lokes, and you know, pretend like I was a West Coast rapper, and just stand at the front door and like battle him, and he would like go and like put on like some goggles and like some Timberland boots and like roll up like one pant leg, and like that was like, he kind of made fun of me for like listening to Tribe Called Quest.
With records, people, I don't know, it's just this community of like people who just believe that music is infinite and, you know, it's transient and it goes so far, and I love that. I love that aspect. We gotta keep music alive.